Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Mad Knitting YouTube channel. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am here to chat about the things that I am making. Today, that is all knitting all the time. It is Friday the 13th, 2022, and I have quite a lot to share with you today. To be totally honest, I should not be taking the time to be recording an episode because it's actually been quite a busy week for a lot of different things. But I have some projects piling up and some that need to go out the door pretty soon. So I thought I would steal a little bit of time from my busy morning and share those things with you. Let's see. Social media. You can find me on Instagram as madtownmama or on Ravelry as madtownmama without the underscore. And I'm also on the Making Co app and I am madtownmama there as well. So today I am not wearing anything hand knit or handmade. It is way too hot. We're having this unusual heat wave. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I think I forgot to mention that. And it felt like winter dragged on forever and spring has been really cold. We even got like snow flurries at the end of April. And then all of a sudden this week, there's this heat wave. It actually hit 90 degrees yesterday and it's humid and it's just awful. It feels like it's the middle of July. So I can't stand to wear anything hand knit against my skin. I should probably make like some nice summer linen tops or something, but I don't have any of those. So anyway, nothing interesting to share about what I'm wearing. I'm actually in concert black despite the heat because I don't know if I've mentioned this on the channel before, but my previous profession before I went back to school to do a degree in city planning was in music. I worked and taught for a long time as a professional pianist. So I still take gigs every once in a while and I've got a couple different things like this afternoon and this evening, very low key, but even so, I need to be dressed appropriately for those things. So that's why I'm in all black today. All right, I think because I'm a little worried about time, I'm just gonna start right in with the things that I've made. So for finished objects, the first thing I have to show you are the Barbie splatter socks, which is what I'm calling them. This is a pattern of my own design. I mean, it's hardly a design. I just took this yarn, which is very pink and splotchy. The yarn is Plymouth Happy Feet Splash, and it's a merino nylon blend, which is a little thicker than the sock yarn I'm used to working with. So I used size 1.5 needles. I cast on 60 stitches. And then I did 2x2 rib for a little while, and then I switched to garter rib for the cuff and the top of the foot. I always knit my socks cuff to toe. And then I did an eye of partridge heel. As you can see. Anyway, these socks are really nice. I think they will be very cozy when it comes time to actually want to wear wool socks again. So, and they're so bright and cheerful. I mean, these shades of pink, because there are multiple shades of pink, are not really anything close to what I normally wear. But when it comes to what I put on my feet, all bets are off. I think it's very fun to have bright, cheerful socks, even if everything else I'm wearing is plain or drab or, shall we say, classic. Anyway, I have the label. I've talked about these socks a bunch, so I don't want to like belabor the point too much, but it's Happy Feet Splash. I bought the yarn, and this really doesn't like to focus. I bought the yarn at Wisconsin Craft Market back when they were still around, and just kind of hung on to it until I was ready to make some socks that didn't require too much planning. So that was finished object number 1. Now, my next batch of finished objects are the reason that I recorded today, because they are presents for a baby who is due next week. I believe the mother is scheduled for an induction if she doesn't go into labor before next Friday. So I really need to get these wrapped up and delivered and everything. So the first item that I made, you've seen before if you watched the last episode. This is called Peanut. It's the Peanut Vest by Tin Can Knits. And in my last episode, I had talked about how I was having a little trouble with it. I didn't really like how the color work was coming out because I use superwash yarn. I always use washable yarn when I make baby presents. So the stitches looked kind of loose, and because the yarn is treated not to felt, it doesn't stick to itself when you're doing the color work, and that's one of the things that makes color work so nice. So I wasn't totally convinced that I liked it. I also had this issue with the neck where I could tell the neck was too small. So what I did was put it aside, finish some other things with the rest of the yarn, and I came back to it. And I undid the neck. I made sure I picked up more stitches along the neckline, and then I was just careful to be really, really loose with the bind off, so it's very stretchy. So I think this actually turned out really, really cute, and blocking really did help quite a lot. So when I block color work, I soak it for a couple of hours, get it just totally soaked. Then I put it in front of a fan to dry, and when it is not quite dry but still damp, I will take a hot iron and just steam the crap out of it. Just like press down. Sometimes I'll put a towel over it so it doesn't scorch, but I'll use pressure and heat and steam just to make it as flat as possible. And I think with superwash yarn, especially where the fibers aren't gonna blend on their own, with wear and washing, it really helps to smooth it out and make it look a little nicer. So I'm really happy with this. I think it's adorable. We know the baby's gonna be a boy, so hence all the blue. The pattern, which I've shared before, it's from this collection by Tin Can Knits called Max and Bodie's Wardrobe. You can buy the pattern individually, digitally online. When I clearly bought this as a hard copy, and it came with a digital copy, which is nice because I could print out the pattern and mark it up without messing up the book. But the original project photos from the design are just adorable. So kind of couldn't resist. So the yarn I used for this is by Knit Circus. They're a local company that I have been a long time supporter of. I love Knit Circus. This is their Divine DK yarn. I forgot to bring the label with me, but it is DK weight. It is 100% superwash, and they dye their yarn in all kinds of beautiful colors. These are semi-solids. Knit Circus is known for gradients and self-striping and just some really cool techniques for variegation. But I'm kind of a traditionalist, I guess. I like the solid colors or the almost solid colors. So that's what I used for this. Anyway, I had 2 skeins of the blue and 1 of this gray. So even with this little vest, I had loads left over. And when I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep the vest, I thought, well, maybe I'll just start a sweater. And I think I shared about this last time too. This is by Gabrielle Dansknit. It's called Tak, T-A-K. I didn't bring a picture of the pattern because the pattern's there wasn't like a photo on it. So it's a cardigan with a little hood. How can I best show it? I made the 1 year size. Obviously, since the baby is due any minute now, we're gonna have several months of very warm weather. So I just made things to be sizes to fit for next winter. Because you don't know how big the baby's gonna be and everything. So the original pattern doesn't call for stripes or color blocking. I added that in. I wasn't really sure how much of the blue yarn I was gonna have, and I wanted to make sure I had enough for the button band, so I just finished the sleeves off in the gray color, which I think is pretty nice looking. The one modification other than adding in stripes is that I opted not to do the button band and buttonhole band as you go. That is something she does in the pattern. I thought it would look really messy if I was striping at the same time. So when I did the cast on, I just left those stitches off and followed the numbers for the rest of it. And then when the whole thing was done with the hood and everything, I picked up stitches all the way around with a smaller needle size and just knit on a garter stitch band for I guess about 4 ridges, and I added buttonholes as I went. And I think it came out pretty nice. The buttons, it took some looking to find buttons that would work, and I'm not 100% happy with these. My first attempt, because I like to shop local, was at the Sow's Ear, which is a wonderful local yarn shop and cafe in Verona. And for me, it's a 10-mile bike ride, most of it on trail. So seemed like a good excuse to go for a bike ride one afternoon. So I went out there and I checked out their button selection, and they didn't have anything that was blue. For whatever reason, they just didn't have anything in stock that was right. So then I went to Joann's, which is, a big box craft store. Not my favorite place. And, their button selection is hit or miss. I feel like they used to have more than they do now. But anyway, I found these. They're a lighter blue. I was hoping to find a blue that would be closer to the shade that I used for the main color. But I think these are okay. They kind of strike the balance between the dark blue and the gray of the stripes. So I think it's fine. They're cute. So when I was done with the sweater, and then I went back and finished the vest, I still had some yarn left, and I just felt like I would like to have as little leftover yarn as possible. I would just like to use this up and make a whole set. So it seemed like a hat might be a good idea. And I didn't really want to use a pattern. I just took the blue and cast on, and then did some ribbing, and then thought maybe I will find a nice chart, colorwork chart, to add for the top of the hat. So I did some looking in my stitch dictionaries. You'll see it all in a second. It turns out that one of the parents of this baby is an avid bird watcher, like huge into bird watching. And I thought I would look for some kind of a bird motif. And the one I settled on was from this book, which I've owned for a while but hadn't used before. It's called Alternate. It's by Andrea Rangel, and it's got a few patterns in it, like, design patterns, but it's mostly full of lots and lots of charts for color work. I have many stitch dictionaries and books of color work charts, most of which I don't really use, but they're fun to look through and get ideas from. But anyway, I finally used a chart from here. I don't want to give away the charts, but she includes a lot of kind of typical stuff, geometric patterns and things, but also there's unconventional stuff, maybe even things that aren't quite, that are maybe, verging on vulgar. Like this here I want to cover the chart. But this here is a bunch of pigs that are pooping, which is funny because pigs poop. There's a pattern here for skull and bones. So if you were making like, I guess something pirate themed or something for Halloween, you could use that. So what I used was a pattern for an owl motif, going with the bird watching theme. I just thought it was absolutely adorable, and also the stitch repeat matched the number of stitches that I cast on, so that all just kind of worked out. Again, I don't love doing color work with superwash yarn, but for this I did use a needle size smaller than for the vest, so I think the stitches are just a little tighter, so maybe it worked a little better. But anyway, I had a lot of fun with it, and the height of one owl seemed like the right size for the hat. And because I was trying to use up the yarn, I did kind of a long ribbed brim so they can fold it up if they need to, but that is what I did. So they're gonna get a whole set. They're gonna get an owl hat, they're gonna get this vest, and then a hooded cardigan for their baby boy. So that is the first, that's all the finished objects I have, and that's the first batch of knitting. A lot of little things. Okay. Now for works in progress, it's a lot of little things too. I've got a pair of socks I'm not going to say much about just because I think I've showed these before and they're very plain. So this is like meeting knitting, sitting in the dark in a concert knitting, what have you. It's just a plain 64 stitch sock. The yarn I think is by Casual Fashion Queen, and as you can see I haven't hidden the ends yet, but I did finish the first sock and I have started the next one. I actually went to a very long concert on Saturday night. I took my daughter, it was at the university, and I mean it was like 2.5 hours long. It was a little too long, but it was really, really good, and this is what I knit during that concert. I think I cast on when we sat down in the audience, and I haven't really knit anything since that night. So it tells you how long musicians like to be on stage sometimes. But anyway, so that's one thing I have going. Another thing I have going is another Poka Hat. So the first one, if you recall, if you've been watching, you may recall that I knit a Poka Hat. This is the first one. It's gray on the outside and there's orange mohair silk on the inside. I like to wear it with the mohair on the inside. Sometimes with the brim folded up and sometimes not. I'm not going to put it on because it is so hot today. But anyway, as a reminder, this is what that is. It is from, as a reminder, the book Moon and Turtle by Sachiko and Kiyomi Bergen. And I so enjoyed the pattern and so much like the hat that I've just decided this is going to be one of my go-to projects now for gifts or for when I need something that I don't have to look at very much because I'm sitting in a meeting or watching a webinar or something like that. Well, the other day I had an all-day workshop in a different city. So before I left, I decided to cast on another Poka Hat. And here's what I've got so far. That was another like 4 solid hours of this one guy presenting. It was kind of amazing what kind of stamina he had for that. But so I've made a lot of progress. I haven't measured it, but I think I've got a few inches to go yet before I do the crown shaping. I don't have the label with me, but the yarn is by Artistic Lily. If you watched my very first episode of Mad Knitting, I shared that I used this fairy yarn paired with mohair silk in the same color, which I have here, held them together to make a pair of mittens for my sister-in-law for her birthday. And mittens don't take very much yarn, so I had quite a bit left, and I decided to make a Poka hat out of the same yarn. So I think the hat will go to her. So if you're watching, pretend to be surprised when you get it, okay? Anyway, it took me a while to decide that I wanted to make this because for some people, mohair can be itchy, especially if it's on a sensitive place like your forehead. But I figured with this hat design, it's made so that you can wear whichever part inside that you want. So if the mohair is itchy, you can turn it so that the mohair layer is on the outside and that only the non-mohair layer is actually touching your skin. So hopefully that will work out for her. Anyway, this is a project that I'll save to give her in the fall or winter, but I love the colors of this yarn. The color, I forget if I mentioned that, it's called Vintage Easter, and this will be the other layer. So, working on that. Now, the last work in progress I have to show you is something I've been planning for a while, and I think I mentioned it in an earlier episode and then didn't say anything because I hadn't started, but it is really fun. My little niece is turning 4 in a couple of weeks. Her birthday is at the end of May. And for Christmas, I gave her a set of Frog and Toad books. Those have been around for decades and decades. If you know Frog and Toad, you will know that they are just the sweetest, most endearing stories. They actually have a lot of emotional depth. They're about what good friends Frog and Toad are and how they support each other through, scary times, through problems they have, and they also have a lot of fun together. Well, I love those books. It turns out my little niece absolutely loves those books. And when someone shared with me that you can buy a pattern to knit Frog and Toad and even buy a kit for the yarn so that your colors are just exactly right, I caved and did just that. So I bought the pattern. The kit came a while ago and I just didn't share it because I hadn't started it. But with her birthday coming up, of course, I had to get going. So I'll show you, I'll put a picture from the website because I don't have a color printer, so my pattern is just black and white. But the pattern is by Frog and Cast. You actually can't buy it on Ravelry. You have to go to their website. And the kit is from Kelson Goods. And this is the postcard that came with it. So you can see the feet, the feet in the picture. So the kit came with, I'm gonna hold you in suspense and show you the yarn before I show you what I've actually finished. The kit came with some hand-dyed DK yarn in 2 colors. I forget what they're called, but the label actually said hand-dyed for Susan, and they had written my name, which was really cool. So I think they're made to order. So there is this green color that you use for Frog, and there's this brown color, there we go, that you use for Toad. It's DK, but you use size 1 needles to knit it really, really tight so that whatever you use for stuffing won't come out. And then for the clothes, because of course they have clothes, you get to make the little bathing suit for Toad and a jacket and trousers for Frog. And I can't even remember exactly what color is used for what, but you get 4 skeins of Jameson fingering weight Shetland yarn for their clothes. And I assume that it will not take very much of any of these to make the clothes because it's just a little toy. So I'll have plenty left to play with. I haven't used this yarn before, so I'm kind of excited about that. Anyway, I haven't quite finished making Frog and Toad, but I've gotten to the same point with both of them, and I think you'll see pretty well how they'll look. So here they are. Here's Toad. The pattern is ingenious. It's rather involved. You have to pay attention to what you're doing, but nothing is difficult. The knees, I think it's just brilliant. When you do the knees, there are these short rows. There are short rows, first of all, for the face, so that the front of the face sticks out. There are short rows for the knees, so his little knobby knees stick out. And then you can see the sort of paddle style feet. The focus is having problems here. There we go. So it's really fun. It's just really fun to make this. You have to follow it row by row. I'll show you Frog too. Frog is made basically the same way. He's just a little taller. So there's the instructions, you follow the same set of instructions, and sometimes you do the same thing for Frog and Toad, and sometimes it's different just because, they're not quite the same shape, but the construction is the same. And he's got the little short row knees too. And the little paddle feet in the hands. I think I should block the feet and the hands so they don't curl so much, but there's I don't know if you can see, but there's a picot bind off for the fingers, which is really clever. I think it's just very clever. So far, the most challenging part of this whole project has been getting in there to hide the ends, because it's knit so tight. I use size 1 needles to get this nice tight firm gauge, and you have to do one leg at a time and do the arms separately, so getting in there to hide the ends and make sure everything is firmed up nice and tight was kind of challenging. And the other thing is the eyes. So what you do for I don't know how well you're going to be able to see, but what you do is mark stitches at the top of the head and then cut that stitch. It's the same technique as making an afterthought heel in a sock, or Elizabeth Zimmerman, the famous knitter from the 20th century, mid to late 20th century, talked about afterthought pockets in sweaters, where you just snip a stitch and then kind of unravel it and then pick up the stitches around the hole. And well, you do that to make the eyes, but it's so tiny that after snipping the stitch, the yarn ends from unraveling just for that little bit for the eye hole are really short. So I'm nervous. I was nervous about them unraveling, and I actually tied knots in the back of the, on the inside of the toy so they won't ravel. And it's fiddly and not like the most fun thing to do. I think if I made these again, I might do I might put waste yarn in like you would do with a planned afterthought heel or a planned afterthought thumb on a mitten, just so that there isn't that tiny little, it was maybe an inch of yarn left in the back. Anyway, then you pick up stitches around the hole and knit these eyelids. Can you see the eyelids? It's just ingenious. Then you have to make little eyes and sew those in. So that's going to be another really fiddly thing. But it's just so charming. I can't believe how much they actually look like a frog and a toad. So I need to finish the eyes, stuff them, sew up the top of the head, and then make their little clothes. But I think the clothes will be easier than the actual, bodies of frog and toad. So that is something I need to finish soon, because this birthday is coming up in a couple of weeks and I would love for her to have them in time. The sweater I started for her, I've just abandoned. I haven't even ripped it out, but it's just sitting in a pile. I think I made her 2 dresses and I'm making her frog and toad. So I think that's probably gonna be good for her birthday. I said that was my last work in progress, but I was wrong. There's one I forgot about. It's sitting right here at my feet. So I'll share that quick. I've only just started. There's a designer named Carol Chan. I think her handle is like Casey Knitting Co. or Casey Knitting. But she came out with this pattern called Buffalo Rose Tea, which you probably can't see very well on my black and white printout. So I'll put a picture in here. But it's a t-shirt pattern, but there's this incredible color work section on the main body of the sweater that is buffalo plaid style with an overlay of these big roses. And it's so cool. It looks like it will be a challenge to knit that color work because there are long floats and there's going to be 3 colors at a time, but I just thought it was so cool that I wanted to make it. So I bought the pattern. I went stash diving because I have a lot of yarn and I need to use what I have and not just buy more. So, for the roses, I really wanted the roses to be red. I know roses come in all kinds of colors, but I love red roses. So I found this bit of red yarn. I'm pretty sure this is Valley Yarns Northampton. I'm not sure what this is left over from. I had bought it ages ago, have used it in various things, and I think hopefully this will be enough for the roses. I've got one more little ball or, bit of it just in case. And then, so red roses, and for the main color, I have navy blue. This is Cascade 220. For some reason, I have 4 skeins of it, which is an awkward amount because it's almost enough for a sweater, but only if you're combining it with something else, at least for my size. So I've had it for a while, tried to figure out the best project for it, and this fits the bill because 4 skeins I think will be more than enough. So I've got navy, and then for the other background color, I have this leftover skein of Berroco Lanas. This is left over from a sweater I made for my daughter, and this is in the color Fog. So it's a very, very light gray, heathery gray. So this is what it will all look like together. And I think it will look very nice. I'm hoping that it's not too much like red, white, and blue to look like patriotic, because that's not really what I was going for. I was looking for something a little more subtle and classy than that, but I really like how these look together in the skein, so I think it'll look good knitted up. And I've only started the ribbing. So the sweater is knit bottom up. I haven't really looked at the instructions, but it's got some kind of raglan shaping at the top. In the design, she has short sleeves, but since I live in Wisconsin, where most of the time it's not 90 degrees, where I would be wearing, a wool sweater in the fall and the winter and the early spring, I might want more sleeves. I don't know if I'll try to make them long or like over the elbow like I did with the last sweater I made, but I don't think I want short sleeves. So I will figure that. I think I will get through the color work and then figure out how the sleeves are going to work. And there's, like I said, there should be plenty of this navy to do that since I've got 4 full skeins of it. So those are my works in progress. As far as timing goes, it's been a little over a half hour, so that's not too bad for me. I think I've been pretty chatty the last few episodes and they've gone a little long. So I think what I will do is share just one more thing because I just feel like sharing. I mentioned that the other day I had this all-day workshop in a different city. Well, it turns out I was in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, which from where I live, it's about a 2-hour drive pretty much straight north of here. And one of the things that we did, there was this all-day workshop, and the mayor was there, and at the end of it, he took us on a walking tour of part of downtown Stevens Point. Now, I've been to Stevens Point before and been through it before, but I hadn't ever really walked around downtown, and I was very, very impressed by the things they have done for installing a lot of public art. So I will share some pictures of that as I'm talking. They've got a park along the river in their downtown where they have some sculptures that were, they've got several sculptures. There's one of a street light post that's bent and kind of designed to look like a guy holding an umbrella. They have some sculptures that were, they did some exchange with sister cities in other parts of the world. So those were really cool. And then they had lots and lots of murals just kind of everywhere on a lot of their buildings, including this one stopped me in my tracks, and I will definitely share a picture here. There was this huge mural of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who of course we lost in 2020. And it's just this incredible painting, so detailed. It has, one of her most famous quotes on the dissent collar that she is wearing. There's a crown on her head that shows, that's in the sort of shadow outline of people protesting, and it's just incredible. And considering we are coming off of this, we're in this time of suspense, waiting to see what the Supreme Court does with Roe versus Wade. It was just very moving to me to see that portrait. I'll just say this here now. I am appalled at what may be about to happen. I fully support full reproductive rights for everyone with a uterus. I don't think this is surprising, because what's happening is not surprising, because this has been on the conservative agenda for the last 50 years. But it's still pretty shocking and appalling to see just how far some states are willing to go, and how determined they seem to be to control other people's bodies and restrict rights and make life-saving healthcare so difficult to get. I don't fully understand it. I don't really understand that need to control, to be so invasive and control so much. The psychology of that, I don't get it. I actually think that one of the best explanations I've come across is I mentioned this book before, The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, where she talks about how the capitalist world we live in has us operating in this zero-sum mentality, where we think that if somebody else gets more rights or more economic freedom or more public support, that somehow, those of us who have more privilege stand to lose something, when the reality is the opposite. The reality is that when we have more freedom and more rights for people, such as reproductive freedom, which is huge, we all benefit, and the economy benefits too. But somehow there are very powerful factions of people that have convinced themselves of the opposite, that we need to restrict rights, I guess, and have more control over people. So I got off on this tangent and forgot to say one of the whole reasons I was bothering to talk about going to Stevens Point on this episode was that as I was leaving, I decided to stop by the local yarn shop there, the name of which is escaping me, but I'll make sure I put it on the screen. It's very small. It's Wisconsin Wool something or other, but they specialize in locally sourced wool or locally sourced yarn. So stuff that is raised with local sheep, Wisconsin sheep, or milled not too far away. And they had a lot of really nice things. And I spent several minutes debating about, well, should I make a big purchase because this is stuff that you can't just find anywhere? Or should I restrain myself because I already have enough of a stash? And I ended up walking out of there with just one skein. It's a very nice skein, and it was kind of pricey. And I lost the label when I was winding it, unfortunately. But it is Corriedale. It is DK weight. I think it's hand spun. And it's just a lot of lovely, subtle autumn colors. You can see there's sort of a lavender in there, orange, gold. It was just really lovely. And it's 100% Corriedale, and it's actually, I have a sweater I made out of Corriedale that I think is softer than this, but I thought this would be really nice to use in like a colorwork yoke sweater. I have some ideas of different, I'll have to just watch and see how it works up gauge wise. But I have a couple ideas of how this might look nice in a colorwork sweater, and I have to dig in my stash and find some yarn that would be appropriate. I'm thinking this might look really nice, like with a really, really dark brown. It wouldn't be a huge contrast, but could look really good. So anyway, I wanted to share that I did make one purchase in Stevens Point because I like to check out local places and support local yarn when I can, within reason, right? So anyway, that is what I wanted to share about Stevens Point. That is all I have to say today. I really need to get back to work, but I appreciate you joining me, and I will see you next time.